Hello friends, welcome back to Aunt Debbie's Boutique. Now at the conclusion of our last video, I promised you a coffee themed quilt next, and I am working on it, and I had every intention of it being the next video. However, I ran out of fabric when I was cutting it out, so I had to order some more fabric, and I will work on that one as soon as the fabric gets here. I hadn't paid close attention to the fabric amounts it called for, and I was using a bunch of fat quarters anyway, and it's a much bigger quilt than I realized. It's going to be almost a queen, or right at a queen size quilt. So bear with me while I get the rest of my supplies in, and hopefully the next video will be our coffee themed video. So while we're waiting on that fabric to get here, I thought we'd make a baby quilt because I have a request for one. A friend of mine wants one for a gift. And so I thought I would use this time to show you how to make a bear claw baby quilt. Now, before we get started, I just wanted to mention a few things just to kind of address some of the comments I get sometimes. One is this channel is geared for beginners, and that's why I take things kind of slow and have a lot of repetition. So if you're an experienced seamstress or sewist, whatever your term is, that you might get a little impatient sometimes, and I just ask you to please be patient because everybody was a beginner once, and I want to make sure that the beginners have a clear view of what I'm doing, and so that's why I break it down like I do. Okay, let's see. What shall we start with? I have drawn out a pattern because I went on the internet and tried to find a bear claw pattern like I make them, and none of them were like that the way I make them. I make them out of jelly rolls, and I love pre-cuts. I don't know what it is. I think it's the mixture of the fabrics in them, but I'm a sucker for any kind of pre-cut. So I know it's more expensive that way, but you can also get yardage and just cut it into 2.5-inch strips if you want. So all the patterns I found on the internet took a big block here and just did half square triangles on the edges, which would work. I mean, obviously it does work. But mine uses strips with half square triangles on the end. So you don't have to have a big square. Every piece is cut out of a 2.5-inch strip. Now, I did use fat quarters for the printed part. However, I did use jelly rolls, a jelly roll for the background print. And the reason I used fat quarters was I had a couple of fat quarters that had all these cute children's prints in them. And I just thought it would make a really pretty and colorful, gender neutral quilt. So, but normally I use a jelly roll when I make, or 2 jelly rolls sometimes when I make these. Now, for a baby quilt, well, first of all, this is our basic block, but that's the sub block, I should say. It takes 4 of them to make 1 block. And we are going to make a quilt that is 3 blocks by 4 blocks. So that's 12 blocks we have to make. So therefore, I have 12 different fabrics. And I'm using all the same fabrics in 1 block. If you use a jelly roll, sometimes they have 2 of the same prints, sometimes they don't. And so you can do opposites, because it takes 2 strips from a jelly roll. So you can do these 2 red and these 2 a red print or whatever, so that they coordinated fine. But if you have two strips that are the same, then you can make the whole block out of the same fabric, which is what I'm doing today. Okay, let's start with fabric requirements. Now, I am going to put this up in a drop box and have a link below. I will also have it at the end of my video. I'll just have it there for a long time, so maybe you can screen capture it if you'd like. I know some people have had trouble getting to my Dropbox links. Some have and some haven't. There was one quilt in particular, I think, that a lot of people had trouble, and I think it was on my end, but I never could figure out why. So I'm going to try it both ways for now, and eventually this pattern will be up in my Etsy shop for sale, but it will have pictorial directions that I take from this video. Okay, I did have this scanned and ready to go up until I realized I had miscalculated the finished size. I forgot to take into account some of the sashing. So I'm going to rework this page and have it all correct when you download it. So what we need from each print, and this will make 4 of those sub blocks. We need we need 5 2.5 by 2.5 inch squares. We need 8 2.5 by 4.5 inch rectangles, and we need 4 2.5 by 6.5 inch rectangles. Then we also need 20 2.5 inch squares of the background print and 4 2.5 by 6.5 inch rectangles of the background print. Now this, I needed a total of, I want to say 240 of these blocks. And we're going to be using them like a half square triangle at the end of the strip. So it's a good idea to draw this line down the center of the back of every piece. However, I didn't want to do that on 240 squares. So I am going to try using the 1/4 inch tape where you can just line it up, and I'll show you that when we're at the sewing machine. For the first one, I went ahead and marked them. Okay, let's lay all these prints aside and let's make our first block. Now, usually I like to show you how I would make the quilt, even if I wasn't making a video. So if I'm going to chain the whole quilt, that's the way I'm going to show you that I made it. Let's make this little green zebra. I think he's cute. But in this case, I'm only going to chain enough pieces to make this one big block, because there's enough pieces that if I tried to chain the whole thing, it would get confusing not only to you, but to me. And so this is the way I would do it anyway. So we're just going to take our one fabric, and I need 16 of these for half square triangles, and I need 4 of these that'll be squares, and then I need 4 of these. Now some of this is for the strips the sashing between the blocks. We're also going to have sashing between the blocks, not just in the block. Okay, the first thing I want to do is take 4 of these. We're going to lay one aside because that one is going to go right here in our center. So we'll lay that aside for now, and I'm going to turn all my fabrics the same way, since this is a directional print. And then I need all 8. No, I need it. I'm sorry. We need this 2 stacks of, or 4, 2 batches of 4, because we're going to do the triangles different. Is that long enough? Yeah, looked a little short there. And then here's our second row. And then we'll lay all of our 6-inch strips over here. I am going to put these 4 aside for right now. We'll use them shortly. And I'm going to take my half square, well, my backing square that we're making the half square triangles. And I want you to notice this is one of these 2-inch squares. And we're going to go from left hand corner, upper left, to lower right. So I want, these are all facing me. I should have faced you, I'm sorry. But my upper left to lower right. Now, we're also on this block, which is one of these 4-inch squares. It goes the same direction. So we're going to put upper left to lower right on that end of the fabric. Now on these, turn the, I'm holding this off camera. That's, I'm sorry. Look at this again. This is from upper left to lower right, both of these. So this is a 2.5 inch, this is a 4.5 inch. Now when we turn it for these 2, they're going to go from upper right to lower left. So these, the rest of these, I am going to turn my diagonal line a little bit different. Now, if this seems a little confusing, it won't be after you've done it once or twice. So, the 2.5 inch squares and half of the 4.5 inch strips are all going to go upper left to lower right. The other half of the 4.5 inch strips and the 6.5 inch strips are going to go upper right to lower left. Now, I'm going to take these over to the sewing machine and I'm going to stitch right on that line. But here's a hint. It's really best if you stitch right to the outside edge of that line where the part you're going to cut off. We want to stitch just a hair, like 1 thread over, and that will help it. It'll compensate for that fold so that you have a nice pretty square edge when you're done. So I'm going to put these in order like this so that I have everything going the right way. And I'm going to take these over to the sewing machine and I'm going to stitch them. And then we're going to come back over here and we're going to iron them before we cut off the excess. And the reason for that is I have been reading in several places that if you will iron them first and then cut it off, it will lay better. And it doesn't really make sense to me that that would be the case, but I'm going to try it because obviously it makes sense to some people because they swear by it. So we're going to go stitch all of these in one long chain. Okay, here is the 1/4 inch tape I was talking about. It's got a line going right down the middle and one 1/4 inch away on both sides. And this is how it comes. I got this from Madam Sew. I'm sure there's other brands out there, but I will link this one since it's what I use. And it comes on a roll like this, and that's quite a bit of tape. So, oh, there's 2 rolls in there. So, yeah, that should last a long time. And it wasn't very expensive. Okay, the way it works is, and it would help if I had my, I've got an extension table, but it doesn't work real good on this table. So I don't use it often. And that tape would work much better because now I'm having to line it up with the center line there. And as long as you keep your point on this center line, you shouldn't have to mark all your blocks. Okay, let's put this in fast motion and get it sewn up. Now that they're sewn, we cut them apart with this little gizmo. I think it's called a thread cutting gizmo. I got at Fat Quarter Shop. I'll link it below because I love it. There are other brands of it made. I think this is one that is proprietary to the Fat Quarter Shop, but they're all good. Okay, now then, I need to iron these open. I just realized it doesn't matter. I got all these going the same way. I don't need to iron this one this way. On these squares, you can iron it either direction. So I wanted them all going the same way. Now these, you can't. And these 4.5-inch blocks that are going different directions, I'm going to put them in different piles so I don't accidentally sew the wrong one in the wrong place. Okay. Let's move the ironing board. And now I'm just going to take my scissor and cut off the excess. And I do think that that does square it off. You can tell if you sewed a good seam if when you fold it over, the edges match. And it looked to me like they were. Or maybe I was forcing them to when I ironed them. Now, these little scraps do not go to waste at my house. They go in a scrap bag for making scrappy quilts or pot holders. And I'm going to see how long I can go without making a scrappy quilt tutorial, because there are so many of them out there. There's no shortage of ideas. But eventually I will have to use up some of my scraps, and I probably will make one. But we use them to make a lot of pot holders around here. Okay, now then, let's refer to our pattern here, and let's lay these blocks out in the order we're going to use them. We're going to use just a plain square, then we're going to use, and I'm turning this so it looks the same for you. That's block number 2. Sorry. This is block number 4 over here in order of sewing, but that's number 3, and this is number 5. So we do want, the reason I numbered these was to show you the order that you stitched them together. So let's take all the 1s and 2s over to the sewing machine, and I'm going to sew them down this side so it matches our pattern. Okay, I'm going to start off with a leader like I should have on the other. That just gives me a running start so I don't have to back stitch and I don't skip any stitches at the beginning or bunch anything up. Okay, let's iron these open. Oh, I'm sorry, I hit the camera again. Just trying to work in too little of a space. Now I am going to iron towards the dark fabric. So that means I'm going to put this side up to iron it. I'm going to set my seam. And then open it up like that. Okay, let's compare this to make sure we've got it right before we get too far in. And yes, the green fabric overlays where the pink fabric, the pink is on there. Next, we're going to go to block 3 and we're going to sew it down this side. So we are going to sew these like this. So I'm going to take these 2 piles over to the sewing machine and stitch them together. Okay, once again, I'm going to iron towards this dark fabric, the last piece we sewed on. Okay, let's compare it. And yes, it matches. Now the next one we're going to do is this one right next to it. So we're going to take this over to the sewing machine and fold it over. And I didn't mention, but I assume you know that I'm using 1/4 inch seams every time. So let's go sew this seam. Okay, once again, the piece we just sewed, we want on top. And then when you flip it open, it's going to be going the right way. Let's use our pattern. And yes, we are right. So our last piece is right here. We're going to take this over, flip it over, and sew it. Okay, the piece we last sewed on top. Let's check it one last time. Let's just use one of them this time. Looks like we've got white where we need white, and that looks like a bear claw or a bear claw quilt pattern. Now then, we want to arrange these so the bear claws are all pointing out. And we're going to use 6-inch strips, 6.5, I'm sorry. You know what? I think I should check these to see. Well, that's just a 6-inch. No wonder it didn't. This is 6.5 inch. And mine are just shy, maybe 1/8 of an inch. That always happens to me. I think I just must not iron them down good enough. This is why I usually like to use a scant 1/4 inch, but I didn't this time. Yeah, mine are all slightly smaller than they should be, but they are consistently smaller, so it shouldn't matter. Okay, what we're going to do now is sew these 3 together, sew these 3 together, and sew these 3 together, and then we'll sew the rows together. So I'm going to take this over to the machine and sew these 3. Then I'll go back up to the top and add these to it. So join me one last time at the machine. Okay, let's flip them over to iron them. And when I have the choice, I'm going to iron towards the path of least resistance, which would be this towards the center, because there's a lot of extra bulk on these seams and it doesn't want to iron that way. So let's iron this one. And this one here towards the center. Now, so our seams will nest. This one in the middle, it doesn't matter which way we would iron it as far as resistance, but it does for nesting. Now we have these seams going out, those coming in. So let's nest these, and you can feel it. What I do is usually start with them a little bit apart and then slide it until they lock in place, and you can feel that. And you can pin it if you want. Sometimes I pin, sometimes I don't. And it doesn't seem to make that much a difference. I get them right a lot of the time, but sometimes I have to tear them out and fix them, or sometimes I decide it's within the margin of error. Okay, I'm going to go sew this one, and then I will add this one to the bottom of it, and we'll iron our block, and our block will be through. Okay, at this point, it really doesn't matter which way you iron them because there's going to be sashing between every block, so you don't have to nest anything. So it makes sense to iron it towards the center. And look, I messed up a seam, got it caught the wrong way. That happens. And there is our first block. Now I am going to go ahead and make the rest of the blocks off camera. I hope you were able to understand what I did. And then once I have all 12 of them made, we will lay it all out with all the sashing and finish it up. So in a blink of an eye for you, and in a couple hours for me, we'll be back. All right, I have all my blocks done. These came from some fat quarters that there were 2 different sets of fat quarters that I ordered, I believe, from Fat Quarter Shop. And I think I only paid like $10 a set. They had 5 fat quarters in each. And one of them was all the cute animals, and this one was with the animals. And these like this was another set. But I thought they all went together real well. So, now that they're all done, let's run over to, let me see if I've got, okay, here's the fat quarter pack with all the animal prints in it and the one stripe. And it's Designs by Scott Barnes fat quarter bundle. So you might, if you're interested in it, I'm pretty sure I got it at Fat Quarter Shop. If not, it was Shabby Fabrics, but I don't think that's the case. Okay, let's take it over to the table and lay it out now. Okay, here it is all laid out. It mostly fits on my table and mostly within the camera lens, so maybe you can see more of this one. There's also going to be sashing on the outside edges, but it would just fall off the table if I laid it there now. So what I'm going to do is sew the sashing in between the blocks, including at the beginning and the end, on a row, then attach it to the sashing that goes between the rows. And I'll continue to add till I get it all done. So hang on and I'll show you the progress. This is the first row done with all of its borders. And I wanted to mention that when you're stitching the sashing to a block, to always have the block on top with the wrong side up. That way you can catch all the seams that have been ironed one way or the other and stitch them down in the right direction. If they're on the bottom, you may not see them and they'll get caught up and get turned the wrong way. So it's much better to stitch with the sashing on bottom and the block on top of that. Okay, let's add another row. And here's our finished baby quilt top. Now I've had a lot of people say they sure wish they could see the final product, quilt after they're quilted and bound and all that. And I have every intention of showing those. I've just had a problem in that the long arm quilter I've been using is so backed up. She's had 2 of my quilts for 6 months now, and she's promising to have them out by the end of the month. But I've got a whole nother stack I was going to take to her, but not until I get these out. So I am looking for other options on getting things quilted. And once they're quilted and bound, I'll do a short little video showing them, or maybe one video showing a whole bunch at once. But I do intend to show you the final product, because they never lay real smooth at this point. But once they've been sandwiched in with the batting and quilted, they look so much prettier. This one needs a good steam press and then quilting. So what I like about this is how gender neutral it is. It could go either way, boy or girl, and the white just to me screams baby. I mean, babies would get it dirty, but it has that real sweetness to it that you think of with soft baby clothes and things like that. So this quilt turned out 52 inches wide by 68 long. That's a pretty good size baby quilt. You could even do one that was 2 by 3, and that would probably be plenty big. But I was trying, I actually did some misfiguring in the beginning, was trying to keep it in the standard baby quilt size, and it ended up being a lot bigger because I didn't allow enough for all the sashing that's in this. So anyway, I do have the pattern up on Dropbox with a link, and I have tested that link. I sent an email to somebody with the link in it, and they were able to just click on the link and get the right to the pattern and be able to download it. So if you're having trouble and you're doing it on your phone, maybe try it on a computer. And I will also put it up on my community page. I think that would be good so you can get the information. Now, I only computed what it would take to make this particular quilt, a baby quilt. So if you want something bigger or smaller, you'll have to figure that yourself. I did list how much it took for each block, with each 14-inch block. And so that would help you know how much to add or subtract for the size you're wanting. I did get in the rest of the coffee fabric, so I'm real excited to get started on that one. I am hoping to have that to you in a couple weeks. I was hoping to get it up by Labor Day. We'll see if I make that deadline or not. But that's the next one, and I'm really excited about it because I just love the fabric so much, and I love the pattern I chose too. But anyway, it's going to be a very big quilt that I shouldn't have. I wish I'd looked closer at the size before I chose the pattern, but I do love the pattern. So anyway, I will be in touch, and just remember, whatever you do, do it to the glory of the Lord. And if you would, please like, subscribe, comment, anything you can do to help this channel. I appreciate each and every one of you, and it's really grown fast this year, and I appreciate the encouragement. All right, until next time.